B2B inflation is plaguing sales and marketing teams everywhere, according to today's guest. She said it's a lot harder right now to get a deal done at every stage of the funnel, but thankfully it's not all doom and gloom. There are things that her team are doing and that others could be doing as well to help get over this inflation hump. I'm Mike Weir, and thanks for joining us on the latest episode of Go-to-Market Innovators. Latané Conant is with us today. She is the CMO of 6sense, where she's focused on taking the guesswork out of predictable revenue growth with the power of AI. Latané is also a published author. You're able to see her book in the background over her shoulder right now. And she's also described as a recovering software saleswoman, which explains a little bit of why she is so focused on leveraging data to ensure marketing can drive deals. And prior to 6sense, she was a CMO and sales leader at Apero, which was acquired by Wipro. Welcome, Latané.
Thanks, Mike. Excited to be here.
I am very, very much looking forward to today's conversation. It's been almost 2 years, actually almost exactly 2 years since Talking Sense conversation that we had. Things have evolved a little bit out there, both in technology, in strategic approaches from a marketing and sales perspective, but
and
also
in the world.
Yes, but also this economy and global environment that we all live in today, which is why I think your topic is so perfect, because we talk about sales and marketing alignment on this show all the time and how that is the key to create an effective, unified go-to-market that drives the best business results out there. And when we were chatting recently, you raised this concept that I honestly hadn't discussed before. And it's something you believe is making these challenges even more pronounced today. So B2B inflation, can you define this for us and talk to us about what you see happening within the environment today?
Sure. So first of all, full disclosure, I made it up. So it's totally made up. It's not, anything real, but we can make it real. But I just, I was thinking about how basically we make the same amount of money, yet you go to the grocery store and milk costs a lot more and eggs cost a lot more. I'm like, how am I spending like $300 at Trader Joe's when I used to get out of here for 75, And so I had this, I was literally checking out at Trader Joe's, whoa, what happened? And I was like, this is kind of what it feels like at work for us, because if you budgets, everyone is been told to do more with less. And, people have, it's okay. We need less technology. We need less people. We need to spend less, but we got to produce the same amount of growth. And so I'm like, this is the same thing I've got inflation at the grocery store, but we also have, inflation out at our jobs. And not only is it that, I think that we're tightening budgets and things, which to be honest, we needed to do. It's not that is not, I don't think, that problematic. It's more what we see in terms of what it takes to get a deal done. And so, one of the things that my team does is every quarter we dissect deals that we won to really understand what was the pattern. So we take all the deals we won, we bring them back into 6sense, and we can see how many activities in the dark funnel, how many website visits, how many contacts we needed to engage. And we are seeing in this data that every quarter it's more content consumed, more website visits, more engaged contacts required to win a deal. So same amount of people, harder to get a deal done, right? And growth targets. And so you kind of bring this all together, and that's where that concept of B2B inflation across sales and marketing, that's where that idea came. And the one nice thing about the one aligning factor for us is, we have, as sales and marketing leaders, this common enemy, which is inflation. And so how do we band together to think about things differently and really reimagine how we work? And so that's what we've been really focused on here, is reimagining how we work. Because to be honest, like, me asking my team to stay a couple hours later or to work another weekend, that's not going to cut it right now. Like, that's a drop in the bucket. And so to me, that's the tipping point. It's like, you know what? We really just have to rethink how we're working. And so that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. And so I agree. As soon as you said the idea of B2B inflation, which absolutely is a thing now, I've heard it everywhere. Everybody is quoting that Latané came up with this term. It's real. I believe it. So what are you doing about it? I think that's where it's so interesting. As you talked with me about this before, like, you're being smarter, and that is driving more productivity for you, for your team, for your company overall. That can really help myself and everybody else kind of learn from your example. So let's talk about that a little bit. What are you doing differently now that's working?
So there's a few things. First of all, just ruthless ICP focus and redefinition of ICP. So we're pretty good about it already, but you can always get better, right? And so just, like, for example, one of our regions was a newer region for us. And, when you go into a new region, you want to try a lot of things, and that's fine, right? So we tried a lot of things. Awesome. And we had a lot of pipeline and a pretty bad win rate. So we could have kept trying things, and the thing is, like, there's a momentum to activity, right? There's a feeling of productivity with activity, if that makes sense. And so we could have just kept doing more and being like, okay, we just need more pipeline. We just need more pipeline. But we came together, called a timeout, and we said, what are the most winnable, like, we need to really, what are the most winnable deals? What are the most winnable accounts? And rather than go broader and say, okay, we need to win more, we need more pipeline, let's focus on more, we said, actually, we're going to focus on less. And we said, there's 700 accounts. And if we do an event and we get an account that wasn't a part of this 700 to the event, cool, but that doesn't count. Like, the only thing that counts is meetings from these 700 accounts. And so we really refined down, and then we just penetrated those 700, and lo and behold, that region was the highest attaining region in Q1. So I think part of it is like this habitual focus on doing more. And as conversions go down, you make an assumption, well, it's just math, right? If my conversion goes down, I need more at the top. But at some point, you got to look at that and say, this is, like, not efficient at all. We actually need to assume we're going to improve our win rates. We're going to assume we're going to improve those, and we're going to relentlessly do what we need to do there versus more. And so those can be tough calls. I got to say, they can be tough calls, but those are the tough calls leaders need to make.
There was a bunch in there that I'd love to unpack a little bit more. One of the things we have talked on this program a bunch about is ICP, ideal customer profile. But I think you added a really important nuance to it. It's not just saying, like, oh, we care about marketers, but not just marketers, demand gen marketers, and not just demand gen marketers, but at this type of company in these regions.
No, it's 700 accounts and, these 3,000 contacts. You have to be very specific.
Yes. And you also do, I believe, a phenomenal job at looking at the data, but like the engagement data, the website visits that they're making, the number of contacts that are engaging with your brand, with content. Can you talk a little bit about, like, how do you think about, and what have you been doing to use some of that, like, behavioral data to influence the ICP, to influence your outbound motions?
Yeah, so two things there. So first of all, we have a newer model. Um, it's actually not that new, but everyone knows us for the buying stage, model and being able to predict for in market. And so, but we have a model that actually predicts for reach. So, and what that means is, have we done enough, statistically speaking? Have we done enough of the right activities across the buying team to get this to an opportunity? So it's called the reach model. Why is that interesting? Well, all of a sudden, if I know there's 700 accounts and contacts that are critical for us to win, I can then start to apply, okay, buying stage, like where are they in their journey? And have we done enough reach? Right. And then that starts to cue the right play. Right. So so let's say it's high intent, so far in the buying journey, and low reach. Oh my God, what are we doing? Like, come on, guys. Like, we need to, like, let's go. We're not doing enough. Right. High reach, consistently high reach, low intent. Maybe we just don't focus on those right now. Right. And so it's sort of like allows us, so we literally have a 4x4 of plays that we run based on the combination of, their buying stage, which is a lot about their intent. And then what have we done? So that's really kind of a good way to like design your strategy. And then, so that's part one. And then part two, and this is sort of how we actually figured this inflation thing out, is I'm kind of a crazy bean, and I spend about 2 weeks preparing for the board meeting, not straight, but just really like digging in. It's like cleaning out your closet, kind of. Organizing your spice drawer. That's the kind of stuff I love. But it's really about like dissecting like what happened, what went well. And I think that a lot of times what I realized we were doing is we were focused on like, where were we red? Like where did we miss a conversion, or where did we miss something? And that's interesting, but you also need to juxtapose that with what is the pattern that winning looks like. So we started doing that. And then it wasn't just, okay, we know this is where we're red. It's okay, we know this is where we're red. And we know that this is the pattern that gets us to green. Right. And so in looking at the deals that we won, again, we can start to see, and for us, the biggest needle mover is engaged contacts. Biggest needle mover. So our win rates double when we go from 6 to 10 engaged contacts. So that's something I can control, right? Inflation feels out of control, right? So, but we've got to take the things that we can control and control those. And so if all of a sudden I know the difference between 6 engaged contacts and 10 engaged contacts is a 50% increase in win rate, then I'm going to look at every stage and say, how do I get us to 10 engaged contacts? Right. And so we started adding all these plays to make sure we were getting the right contacts engaged through the cycle. So that's kind of an example of how we really look at things to make it, as controllable as possible.
Yeah. And could you just quickly kind of define, what does reach mean in this context for you? Like, is it a function of impressions? Is it a function of engagement with very specific activities? How does reach work in your model?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of those things. So it basically has built a pattern for me, for my 6sense deals, and for your G2 deals. What is the right combination? What is typically the right combination of reach? And then it's comparing what is happening to that pattern. So your reach score might be tons of impressions, My reach score might be tons of outbound emails, right? So it's looking at it's looking at past performance to predict the future, essentially.
Got it. Okay.
And it's a
Thank you
combination of marketing and sales activities across the buying team.
Yeah. And what you just raised there is an interesting thing that I really like about also what you're doing right now, which is isolating, who should be doing what between sales and marketing. Right. And I think that's where you had shared previously some tangible examples of how you're adapting, like what your expectations of BDRs are right now. And it's like, what should you be doing while marketing does some stuff that you used to do? Right. I think that's phenomenal examples of how you're looking at the sales and marketing alignment, but also really just reinventing how do you work smarter to deliver a better outcome with the accounts that you think can convert. Can you share a little bit more about like how have you been adapting and thinking differently about who does what between sales and marketing?
Yeah. So the only asset a salesperson has is their time. And we just established earlier that it's going to take them more time to close a deal and more activities to close a deal. So, all they have is their time. We've got to, one, make sure we prioritize well. Two, they need to know what it's going to take to work a deal, because it's sort of like, I don't want to run 18 miles and then not get a trophy for the marathon if I know there was only, a few more left, or 25 miles when there's only one point whatever left. So, helping to understand what it takes. And then that slack has got to get like somehow taken up, right? And so trying to figure out from a marketing perspective, especially using things like generative AI, how do we scale up our team? And so, we actually are using an AI assistant a lot of places to help, particularly with things like outbound email. Like outbound email it's okay, right? Like, we have a lot of rules in place around personalization. I think we do a pretty good job, but you still find some that you're like, whoa, right? And so, being able to use Chat GPT to to dissect, intent and all of these different things and actually start to write and respond and book meetings is kind of a game changer. And so we're really layering that assistant on lots of places to help us make sure we're getting the right activity in. We're engaging all of the buying team, but we're doing it in a really scalable way. And we're also it's not just an automated blast, right? It's personalized, it's conversational. And so a good example is, we just had, and you were there too, we just had Forrester Summit. And that's a big investment. Like anytime we do these events, it's like a big investment, not just of dollars, of time, right? It's my team's time. It's sales time to fly there. It's sales time to book the meetings before. It's sales time to follow up after. And it's an important part of our strategy, but how do we do it differently? And so, one of the things that we did is, I wanted to do personal invites to my network to come to our club, our lounge. I could have done maybe 50. You know what I mean? Honestly. But, there were 1,400 that we wanted to do. And so my AI assistant was able to do personal invites and get people, they didn't have to go to a landing page. It was really easy for them just to say, yep, I'll be there. This is the time I'll be there, and have it all coordinated. That's great. You know what I mean? Same with things like webinar follow-up and webinar, recruitment. So just being a lot smarter with how we use our calories. And that's an example of what we're doing using our own technology. We're also using Writer, and we're dramatically scaling up our content production. So we've scaled up our content production 50% with the same headcount using that. With the AI assistant that I talked about, which is a 6sense's conversational email, 10% of our pipeline is what I call autonomous. Like you think about an autonomous driving car, we have autonomous pipeline. It's totally, the meeting is 100% totally booked by the AI assistant. So we just have to reimagine, how we work. And what I love about that is we've got our frontline teams very focused on being as human to human as possible. So a lot more calling, a lot more connecting, the opportunities to be human and create that connection. Let's put them there.
Yeah.
And let's take the things that are, administrative, and have an AI assistant do it.
Yeah. And it's a phenomenal example of the true, the current power that generative AI especially has is it just allows refocusing, right? And I loved the example of how you were talking about, BDR's previous conversation, BDR's pivoting from, doing all the sequential messaging email campaigns and stuff that now you have the generative AI conversational email handling to really be more personal, to be more engaged within social, within
social,
just phone calls and
yeah.
events. Like it truly is an interesting thing of like, okay, AI is going to help your humans be more human. Love that. Like that's another one that you've got to own that conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, already filed. Nobody can claim it. But to that point, like I think what you're doing is not only being incredibly smart about just rethinking how you're going to market across the sales, marketing, and overall 6sense organization, but you're really using tech to empower that go-to-market motion. You've mentioned a few different things like within your own platform that you're using. What other tech would you be recommending that CMOs and CROs listening in investigate and see, like, is this a fit for you? Like, what are those game changers that just make the world of difference for your organization right now?
So I mentioned Writer. We're having a lot of success with that. One of my favorite stories just on that, Mike, is, we acquired a bunch of companies over the last 18 months, 2 years. And as a CMO, that's exciting, but it's also like, what do we do with these brands? What do we do with this content? Right. And they all have all this content, and it's not in your brand. It's not in your voice. It's not in your tone, but it's getting some SEO juice, and you don't want to just like throw it out either. Right. And so you kind of don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. And eventually, like what's happened in the past is like, okay, fine. That's so old. Just take it down. And you'd kind of like lose out, right? And so what we did with Writer is we took 100 blogs from a company that we acquired, and what we like about Writer is you can really train it on your brand, your tone, your voice, the words that we use, the things that we make a thing. 100 blogs, and in 100 minutes it rewrote the blogs. They needed some editing, but like, boom.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So just a really like no-brainer, right? And so what's interesting on that one is I think that like if you want, even if change is for the better, change is hard. And so what I kind of sat the team down at the beginning of this year, as I said, we're not letting anybody go, but we're not hiring anybody either. So, and we've got to grow 70%. That's the problem statement. Doing the way we do it before right now is not the option. Like that's impossible. Like it's literally physically impossible and emotionally impossible. And I'm already tired. I don't want to work another weekend. So every function I challenge, like, what do we do different here? And you can buy technology. My CFO doesn't love that, but fine. I will advocate for the technology that you need, or the process change that you need, or, the program that we need to go and kill because it doesn't work as well as we thought. but like everybody has to come up with their plan on, how are we going to like reimagine how we work? And how are we going to have fun while we're doing it? And so I think like when you frame it in that context, it becomes kind of exciting for people. I mean, our writers are like loving, experimenting with generative and things like that. And then, again, our BDRs are, think about for them going from taking an email, customizing it a little bit, doing their thing. I mean, it's just like this task list to being able to actually have conversations, and think about that for their growth and their promo path, which is critical for us, for our BDRs. So it's like also like a big accelerator to, I think, people's development, to be able to like hone these new skills.
Agreed wholeheartedly. I think you threw out two things in there that will have to be follow-up episodes. Would love to get a little bit deeper into your learnings around M&A and how to do great integrations of really good brands, right? Like that we'll talk about that in a whole episode. And then change is hard. You're 100% right. And I'm wondering, as we wrap for today's conversation, do you have any additional words of wisdom, any final parting thought that you would leave the CMOs and CROs with to help them as they're thinking about B2B inflation and how to adapt and work smarter?
I think you have to be the change you want to see. So it starts with you, and you can say, hey guys, we need to change and but if you keep doing things the same and you're not willing to mix it up and try new things, then what does that really say? And so I'm a big believer in like, let's be the change we want to see. And I also think you kind of have to set. One of the things I learned at Ariba was about a BHAG. Like, I think that the Ariba leadership did a great job of setting like 1 or 2 big, hairy, audacious goals, not 20, 1 or 2. And then the whole company like knew that, measured it. It was very visible. And so I call them boom stats. Like, what are our boom stats, right? And so that's where that autonomous pipeline came from. I'm like, if we're doing it right, we should have 10% autonomous pipeline. And I thought it would take us a year, and we did it in 1 quarter. So now I don't know what to do. But anyway, that's a different conversation. But like, I think sometimes we put out too much, and then the team's like, I don't really know what to focus on. But if you can align everyone around, 1 or 2 really cool boom stats that if you achieve those, you've achieved all these other things. So, so autonomous pipeline is a great example. If we have autonomous pipeline, that means we've set up a ton of processes, we've changed a ton of activities, we've deprioritized things that BDRs worked and moved it to the AI. Like we've had to do a lot of work to get to that. Another example is when we rolled out our certification, or before, we didn't even have a certification. And my boom stat was, I want 1 person certified. 1. Because we had nothing. We had no certification. So it's like, we got to come up with the certification. We've got to market the certification. We got to get people enrolled. We got to get 1 person through it. You know what I mean? So it's like that stat that means you did a lot to like achieve that. So that's big for me.
Nice. Latané, this has been a phenomenal learning experience for me. I'm really appreciative of your time to be able to share exactly how you're thinking about B2B inflation and give us some tangible examples of how y'all have adapted. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everybody else listening in took as much away from this as I have.
Thanks, Mike. Talk to you guys soon.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of the day.